Imagine having a debt that is just so massive. It would take you like 50 lifetimes of grueling labor to pay off. You go to sleep just completely crushed by the weight of it, but then, the next morning you wake up to find your account balance is suddenly, inexplicably, zero.
Hello, listeners. We are Deep Dive, a program that explores the truth in depth. Following our 6th episode, today marks the 7th installment of this 10-part series. Let us embark on a journey to explore the truth deeply together today.
Welcome back to the discussion, everyone. Let's just pick right up where we left off in our last deep dive, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it.
Because we established a really massive foundational truth last time by looking at the historical and legal reality of the crucifixion.
The actual historical event.
Exactly. We saw that Jesus dying on the cross was absolutely not him being a fraud or like some failed revolutionary.
No, not at all.
We went deep into that ancient text, Deuteronomy chapter 21, which actually laid out the specific parameters for how the promised Messiah would operate.
It's a very precise blueprint.
It is. And we learned that being hung on a tree, it wasn't just a brutal Roman execution tactic. Under ancient biblical law, it was the visible mark of being utterly cursed by God.
Yes, a very specific legal status.
So his cursed death on that tree was the exact calculated method God promised to use. He took the eternal judgment and the curse meant for us, absorbing it completely, to basically open up an escape route for humanity.
Right. It was a deliberate legal fulfillment of a prophecy. It was an incredibly precise operation executed with the precision of a surgeon.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
God accomplished this monumental event over 2,000 years ago in the physical land of Israel. He sent the promised Messiah, and through that specific death on the cross, the ultimate payment was made.
But, observing that historical fact brings us to the core logical question for our analysis today.
Which is really the crux of the whole thing.
Right, because God opened this door, yes. But how exactly does an event that happened 2 millennia ago all the way in the Middle East become effective and valid for you?
Exactly. For you, the listener, sitting in your car or your living room today.
Did God swing this massive door of salvation open only to just step back and leave it entirely up to your own human effort to somehow crawl through?
Right. How does a historical event cross time and space to update your personal legal status right now?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? Because if we don't understand the mechanism of how this works, then, all of this just remains an abstract history lesson.
It might be intellectually interesting, sure, but
it doesn't change your life.
Exactly.
And before we can answer how we access this path, we first have to really understand the tools God chose to explain it. Which brings us back to a core rule of our program.
Right, our foundational rule.
We are analyzing written text. Whether you're reading the Gospel of John or, say, the letters of Paul, you have to realize that God used human language via the Holy Spirit as a communicative tool. And written language has immutable rules.
That is a critical foundation for everything we do here. Language isn't just a blank canvas for our personal feelings.
Right, it's not just a mood board.
No, it has structure, it has grammar, syntax, and logic. The text embodies fundamental principles and, objective characteristics that are inherent in all written communication.
So we can't just treat the Bible like a book of daily affirmations.
Definitely not.
You know how people will flip open a book, point at a random sentence and say, wow, the word peace really spoke to me today, even if the actual sentence was there is no peace for the wicked.
Right, they just pull a word completely out of its context.
Exactly. If you get a letter from your bank, you don't just stare at the word approved, get this warm emotional feeling of wealth, and totally ignore the surrounding words that say you are not approved.
That would be a financial disaster.
The words are communicating a specific, objective reality. The solemn fact is, the moment you isolate specific words or partial segments just because they emotionally catch your eye,
you drift completely away from the author's original intent.
Exactly.
Which is exactly why grasping the overall context is paramount. You have to understand the constituent elements of the text and how they are interconnected.
Yeah, how they link together.
Right, through specific clues, themes, and historical context to form a cohesive whole. We want to enable you to clearly distinguish God's original intent from, interpretations or teachings that deviate from it.
So let's apply that objective structural reading right now to the mechanism of salvation.
Let's do it. In the book of Romans, specifically chapter 3, verse 24, the text uses very precise, heavy theological terms.
Okay.
It speaks of individuals being saved, being justified and being declared righteous.
Now, in our modern everyday language, we throw words like saved around, like very casually.
Oh, all the time.
I mean, I saved my document, or the goalie saved the match.
Right, it loses its weight.
But in the context of this first century text, these words have a very specific, almost intimidating legal weight.
They absolutely do. These terms are ripped straight from the context of an ancient courtroom.
Wow.
They aren't describing a vague, warm, spiritual feeling in your chest. When the text talks about being justified or declared righteous, it is specifically describing the exact legally binding moment that the 2,000-year-old sacrifice actually takes effect in your personal life.
So it's an official transaction.
Yes. It means the judge has brought down the gavel. The historical event of the Messiah taking the curse on the tree has been officially applied to your record.
Changing your standing before the court of God from condemned to clean.
Exactly.
Let me ground this in a modern scenario so we can really feel the weight of what that courtroom analogy means for you listening.
Please do.
Think about modern medical billing. Imagine you had to undergo life-saving treatments for years and you racked up a massive, unpayable medical debt.
A crippling amount of debt.
We're talking tens of millions of dollars. You could work 50 lifetimes, hand over every single paycheck, and you wouldn't even cover the interest.
You're just completely bankrupted by it.
Exactly. But one day, you check your mobile phone, you log into the hospital's patient portal, and the notification says your balance is suddenly zero.
Just zero.
Now, here is the key thing to observe. Someone else, a deeply generous benefactor, actually went down to the hospital billing department days ago and paid the entire thing in cash.
A staggering, almost incomprehensible act of intervention.
Right. But notice the timeline here. The actual payment, the handing over of the cash, happened in the past down at the hospital.
Right.
But being justified is like the precise moment your personal online account balance legally updates to zero. The payment was a historical event, but the justification is the moment that payment is officially credited to your specific account.
That mirrors the biblical mechanism perfectly.
Yeah.
The 2,000-year-old event on the cross is the payment at the billing department.
Right.
It is an objective historical fact. Justification is your spiritual account being wiped clean today. The text is objectively telling us that this historical act of redemption is the sole basis for a person being justified.
Wait, hold on a moment. Let me push back on that because this is where, human nature kicks in.
Okay, let's hear it.
If my account balance says zero because this benefactor paid it, does that mean I'm totally off the hook?
What do you mean?
Well, does the hospital or even the benefactor expect me to come in on weekends and mop the floors to show how grateful I am?
Ah, I see.
Because did God say, I paid the infinite price, but now you have to earn the right to keep the zero balance through good deeds, charity, and intense spiritual effort?
Right.
Because if I still have to work it off, that's simply impossible to accept. It defeats the whole purpose of someone else paying the bill.
That is the exact logical dilemma, and it's why we must look closely at the text. God's legal framework actually completely agrees with your hesitation. Yes. If we look at Romans 3.27, the author anticipates that exact question and directly answers it.
Okay, what does it say?
The text introduces an unchangeable mechanism. It explicitly rules out human effort, what the Bible categorizes as works. Instead, it introduces a completely different operational system, which it calls the law of faith.
The law of faith. So it's not a suggestion and it's not like a feeling.
No.
It's categorized as a structural law.
Precisely. It is a fixed spiritual law operating with the same unwavering consistency as the laws of physics or mathematics.
Wow.
And there is a deeply intellectual, rigorously logical reason why human effort is totally impossible here.
Okay, walk us through that.
We have to examine what the true penalty for our sin actually is, according to the text. The penalty isn't just having a difficult life on earth, facing illness, or feeling a sense of moral guilt.
Right, it's not just a bad day.
No, the true objective penalty for sin, the debt owed, is enduring eternal judgment and the curse in hell after physical death.
That is a massive distinction. So it is a debt that literally cannot be settled with earthly currency or, earthly actions.
Exactly. Think about the physics of this spiritual law. No living human being can pay a post-death, eternal penalty through their own willpower, moral effort, or earthly achievements.
Because we're limited, we're finite.
Exactly. It's a fundamental impossibility. You cannot work off a debt that requires your infinite, eternal destruction. A finite human suffering eternally never actually reaches the end of an infinite debt.
Wow. Yeah, the math just doesn't work.
It doesn't. Therefore, God's justice system required a substitute who was infinite. He had to send the Messiah, his own son Jesus, to perfectly take our place.
Right.
Because of his infinite nature, he could endure the infinite weight of that eternal curse in a finite amount of time on the cross.
So trying to rely on our own good behavior or human effort to clear this eternal debt is, it's like trying to pay off $1 billion corporate fine by finding a few lint-covered coins in your couch cushions.
That is exactly it.
It's not just insufficient, it's categorized entirely wrong.
It is entirely disproportionate to the scale of the justice required. Because we are completely structurally incapable of paying this eternal penalty, God's solution had to be delivered to us entirely differently.
It had to be a totally different system.
Yes. It could not, under any circumstances, rely on our performance.
Which brings us to a very specific cluster of words used in the text right alongside this concept of faith.
Yes, what do you see there?
Well, we see words like grace, without cost, and gift. And again, for the listener, this highlights why we don't just isolate verses. We look at the cohesive whole.
Absolutely.
These words form a very clear, objective picture of the delivery method.
Yes, they are the logical, natural result of our total inability to pay.
Let's look at the gravity of what a gift means in a life or death scenario.
Okay.
Think about, say, a governor granting a full, unconditional pardon to a prisoner sitting on death row.
A very serious situation.
Right. The governor signs the document, the state seal is applied. The warden walks down to the cell, opens the door, and hands the prisoner the pardon.
Okay, I follow.
Now, imagine if the prisoner reached into his pocket and tried to hand the warden 3 pennies and a piece of pocket lint to help pay for the pardon.
That would be absurd. And honestly, it would actually be an insult to the authority of the governor.
Exactly. Because the prisoner cannot buy a pardon. The pardon is a legally binding document paid for entirely by the governor's authority and grace.
Right.
Trying to chip in your own effort insults the giver. It implies the governor's power wasn't enough, or that you somehow need to purchase your way into his favor.
Which completely undermines the definition of a gift.
Exactly. Faith, in this context, is simply the prisoner walking out of the open cell door. You aren't earning the pardon by walking out, you are just receiving the reality of what was freely given.
That's a profound way to look at it.
Without cost means exactly that, zero cost to you, because the ultimate unfathomable cost was entirely absorbed by Jesus.
And if we connect this to the broader structural message of the Bible, the brilliant design of this legal framework really shines through. Well, throughout the Old Testament, God instituted the sacrifice of animal blood. Now, why blood? It wasn't arbitrary.
Right, there's always a reason.
The text in Leviticus states that the life of a creature is in the blood. The physics of this spiritual law dictate that sin results in death.
Okay.
So to balance the scales of justice, a life must be given. Death must occur.
But the animal sacrifices were never the final solution, were they?
No, they weren't.
It was more of a temporary measure,
Yeah.
like putting a bucket under a leaky roof instead of actually fixing the hole in the ceiling.
That's a great visual.
It keeps the floor dry for a moment, but the storm is still raging outside.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. An animal, a finite, lesser creature, cannot truly substitute for a human soul.
Right, it doesn't equate.
The book of Hebrews explicitly says it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. It was the visual aid, a legal placeholder really, teaching humanity the severe reality of justice until the true solution arrived.
And that solution was Jesus.
Yes, who the text calls the ultimate propitiation.
Oh, wait, let's break that word down for a second, because propitiation is one of those heavy textbook terms that can cause people to just glaze over.
It is a critical legal term, though. Propitiation comprehensively satisfies the demands of justice and turns away wrath.
So it balances the equation perfectly.
Exactly. God provided his own son to be the final eternal sacrifice. He endured the curse so that the cure could be offered to you completely free of charge.
Wow.
The sheer magnitude of what happened 2,000 years ago is so immense, so infinite in its value, that the only appropriate logical way for God to let us receive it is as an unearned gift.
So that's the connection to faith.
Yes. That is why God established the law of faith rather than a law of human works. The law of faith actually protects the absolute perfection of Jesus' sacrifice from being tainted by our inadequate efforts.
Okay, so I follow the logic. The debt is infinite. Jesus paid the infinite price. We received the zero balance through the law of faith without cost.
Correct.
But I have to ask, faith in what exactly?
That is the big question.
Because just telling someone to, like, have faith or just believe sounds way too broad.
It does.
In our modern culture, the word faith is thrown around to mean almost anything. Is it just believing that a creator exists somewhere out there in the universe?
No.
Or, believing that Jesus was a profoundly good historical teacher who had some nice things to say about loving your neighbor?
This raises what is arguably the most important question of our entire discussion. And again, we solve this by looking objectively at the author's intent in the text, rather than our cultural assumptions.
Right, looking at the actual words.
God's exact requirement for this legal transaction is not a vague general belief in spirituality. It is not just acknowledging a higher power.
Okay.
The law of faith specifically requires believing in this precise Jesus as defined by the text.
Meaning, we don't just get to invent a version of Jesus that makes us feel comfortable and slap the word faith on it.
Precisely. You must believe in the promised Messiah of the Old Testament.
The one from the ancient prophecies.
Yes. You must place your faith in the specific Jesus who was hung on a tree, who perfectly took your exact curse and judgment, who shed his blood as your ultimate substitute, and who washed your sins away through that specific historical act.
So it's very specific.
It is about believing in the factual reality of the mechanism he accomplished.
So let me translate this, make sure I have it crystal clear for our listeners.
Go ahead.
It's not just me saying, I believe Jesus existed as a historical figure in the Roman Empire.
No.
It's me saying, I believe Jesus is the promised Messiah who took the eternal penalty in hell that I personally deserved. He died visibly cursed on a tree in my place, and his blood paid my infinite debt in full.
That is the exact formulation. When you believe this specific truth, when your faith is anchored in that exact historical and theological reality, that is when the 2,000-year-old event instantly applies across time and space to you.
Wow.
That is the moment the hospital bill drops to zero. That is the moment the judge strikes the gavel and you are justified, made perfectly clean.
That's incredible.
It is a legally binding transaction executed through the law of faith.
Mm-hmm.
God established it as an immutable law so that no one, neither human nor spiritual enemy, could ever alter it or change the terms.
That really shifts the entire paradigm, doesn't it?
It changes everything.
It takes faith completely out of the realm of just being an emotional state you try to drum up on a Sunday morning, and it anchors it in an objective, historical reality.
Exactly.
It's essentially like a highly specific financial transaction. If I want to buy shares in a specific, highly successful company on my phone, I have to type in the exact ticker symbol.
Yes, the specific letters.
Right. If I just type in random letters because I have a strong emotional belief that I'll get rich, I'm investing in a fantasy.
The system won't recognize it.
Exactly. The stock market system requires the exact symbol to execute the trade. The system doesn't care how sincere my emotions are if I type in the wrong letters.
That is a phenomenal parallel. If you hold deep, sincere faith in a Jesus who is merely a good moral teacher, or a Jesus who is just a revolutionary martyr who didn't actually take your eternal curse on the cross, you've invested your faith in the wrong symbol.
You typed in the wrong letters.
Yes. Your faith, no matter how emotionally potent, is not anchored in the legal mechanism God established. God's law of faith demands belief in the specific Messiah who served as your substitute for the eternal curse.
That specific targeted belief.
That specific targeted belief is the sole trigger that activates the effect of his infinite sacrifice in your life today.
So what does this all mean for you as you navigate your life listening to this right now? It means we simply cannot afford to be careless with how we read these texts.
We really can't.
When we understand the mechanics of this system, we see why grasping the overall context is so incredibly vital. We aren't reading the Bible to find a daily motivational quote to make us feel better about a frustrating day at work.
No, it's so much more than that.
We are reading the objective legal framework of how the creator of the universe rescues humanity from eternal destruction.
Yes, and that underscores why we emphasize observing the text exactly as God inspired it to be written, without injecting our own cultural bias.
Right, keeping it objective.
When you deeply understand the constituent elements, the ancient Old Testament promises, the severe legal reality of the curse, the physical necessity of a blood substitute, and the finality of the cross, they all interconnect perfectly.
They form a complete picture.
They form a cohesive, unbreakable whole that proves both God's absolute, uncompromising justice and his boundless unearned grace.
It really is an airtight legal system of grace. And honestly, realizing that this entire rescue operation relies strictly on the law of faith and not my own human effort, it just brings such profound relief.
It really does.
I mean, if my ultimate standing before God depended on my own daily performance, I would be terrified every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd constantly be wondering if I'd done enough, or if a mistake I made yesterday ruined my chances forever.
It would be exhausting.
But because the infinite debt was paid in full 2,000 years ago, and my part is simply to accept the pardon through faith in that specific historical act, well, it offers real objective peace. The hospital bill really is zero. The governor's pardon is real.
It offers true rest for the human soul. But we must caution that it is a rest that only comes from genuine, precise faith in the correct object.
Right.
And that is an area where we must be completely, unflinchingly honest with ourselves.
Exactly. So to summarize our core lesson today, and to reinforce our objectives for this program for you listening, we must always grasp the overall context of the text as God originally intended it.
That's the foundation.
It is not a random collection of disconnected emotional quotes. It is the cohesive, objective legal framework of how the law of faith applies Jesus' historical sacrifice to our lives right now.
Yes.
We receive the benefit of his substitutionary death without cost, purely as a gift, simply by believing in the specific Jesus who bore a curse on the tree.
That's beautifully summarized.
And before we go, think about this. If faith is an objective legal trigger rather than a fleeting emotional state, it means your standing with God doesn't fluctuate based on whether you're having a good day or a bad day.
It's anchored.
The transaction is already settled. The gavel has already fallen.
That is a powerful truth to rest upon. However, you might listen to all of the mechanics we discussed today and say to yourself, I believe that. I have faith.
Right.
But this raises an incredibly urgent question. Could your belief just be an illusion?
Oh, wow.
How do you actually know for sure if the faith you hold right now is the exact, genuine faith that God demands, according to his law?
That's a heavy thought.
Is it possible to think you have the authentic ticket, but actually be holding a counterfeit? We invite you to join us for our next installment, where we will uncover the objective answer to that profound question.
An incredible and honestly chilling question to leave off on. We all need to examine exactly what ticker symbol we've invested our eternity in. Think about that governor's pardon. Make sure the document you are relying on is the one the ultimate judge actually accepts. Thank you for joining us as we explore the truth deeply. Until next time on The Deep Dive.